It's not the kind of memory you can hold physically. Just a ledger, its blocky handwriting a faded blue against yellowing paper. A column of dates on the left, a column of names on the right, separated by a thin line, a division that seemed insignificant then. I didn't grasp at 6 years old that a line could represent a journey, or how many such journeys lay ahead. At that age, I learned to wake before the house itself did. Waking early meant securing the bathroom first, claiming a coveted spot on the couch, and generally establishing a small piece of control before the chaos of the day began. In a foster home, each day felt like a race, and the reward was a fleeting moment of peace, a brief respite from the constant uncertainty. Morning, Jonah. Mrs. Pierce greeted me on my first day, her tone implying a familiarity that felt both surprising and strangely comforting. The name, technically mine, was one that had finally taken hold, fitting me like a second skin. She possessed a remarkable ability to fill a room with her presence, making it feel as if she'd always been there. Clad in a floral robe, she held the ledger in one hand, a pen clipped to its top. "We do roll call," she explained, tapping the paper gently. "Don't be startled. It's just so I can keep everyone straight. There are 6 of you for now." I nodded, affecting an air of normalcy, pretending that 6 siblings was a perfectly ordinary thing to wake up to. "Rules are on the fridge," she added with a reassuring smile. "You'll get the hang of it." I believed her because I needed to. The alternative, the ever-shifting landscape of rules and expectations from one home to the next, was a brutal lesson I would learn far too often. The ledger followed us into the kitchen, a silent observer. Names were called, heads were lifted in response. "Here," murmured Alicia, a girl whose braids caught the morning light, her eyes already distant. "Yo," grunted Ty, older and seemingly always mentally elsewhere. There was Harper, a collector of facts like precious stones, and the twins, Cole and Cam, who often finished each other's sentences unless they were engaged in a sibling squabble. I said, "Here," and Mrs. Pierce smiled, drawing a neat line through my name to mark my presence. "Eat," she instructed, and the simple command dispersed us to bowls and spoons. The cereal was bland but sweet, its sugary coating clinging stubbornly to our teeth. The kitchen's east-facing window bathed the room in sunlight, a warmth that felt almost intrusive, like a nosy neighbor. "Where'd you come from?" Cole asked, his mouth full of cereal. "Riverton," I replied, referencing the location of my previous foster home. The answer felt as automatic and detached as saying yesterday in response to when. "Riverton," he repeated, the name seeming to lodge itself in his memory for future reference. Alicia slid the milk toward me without making eye contact. Her chipped gold nail polish hinted at a life lived beyond the confines of the foster home. "Don't let Ty talk you into skipping school," she advised. "He thinks truancy is a personality trait." "Truancy is a survival tactic," Ty countered, his words sounding rehearsed, practiced, and polished for effect. "A survival tactic involves maintaining good grades so you can get out," Alicia retorted, their words clashing above the table like crossed wires. Mrs. Pierce made a note on the ledger. She observed everything. The way I held my spoon, the way I flinched at the sound of the back door slamming. "First day here," she said, her voice softening. "It's okay to be quiet." My silence wasn't born of fear. It stemmed from a cautious observation. Listening carefully allowed me to distinguish between the literal words spoken and their underlying meaning. In foster care, meanings were often concealed beneath words, like hidden keys under doormats. After breakfast, we gathered near the front door, our backpacks resembling protective shells, our shoes representing compromises made along the way. The hallway carried the faint scent of lemon cleaner, but a subtler aroma also lingered, a scent that spoke of family, yet not one that felt like my own. Framed quotes adorned the walls, carefully selected by Mrs. Pierce. One read, "Home is not a place, it's a feeling." Another said, "Bloom where you are planted." I silently added in my mind. Even if you're in a paper cup. The bus stop was 2 blocks away, a distance that felt far longer in unfamiliar territory. We relied on landmarks for reassurance. A blue mailbox, a cracked sidewalk with a stubborn weed, a porch with wind chimes that sounded like an approaching storm. Alicia stood beside me, arms folded, her headphones tucked into her jacket pocket. "There's no music," she explained when she noticed my gaze. "The cord keeps people away." "Does it work?" I inquired. "Depends on want to talk," she replied. "Do you want to talk?" She considered my question. "You can ask questions," she conceded, "one a day." "Why only one?" I pressed. "Because I have to ration my answers," she explained. "Otherwise I run out." I liked her immediately. At school, the office contained a stack of temporary ID cards, as if identity itself could be temporarily shelved. The secretary offered a practiced, helpful yet non-intrusive smile. "Welcome, Jonah," she said. "We'll get you set up." Set up meant a class schedule with teachers who knew my name only from paper, a locker with a jam door and a combination that had belonged to someone else, and a gym teacher who addressed me as Buddy as a substitute for genuine connection. At lunch, the cafeteria tables were like continents, and I drifted from one to another, a solitary voyager. Ty waved me over to his group of boys, whose social standing seemed to be measured by their level of nonchalance. "He's with us," Ty announced, and for 40 minutes, I belonged to a social group whose humor I only partially understood. After school, the house appeared smaller, diminished somehow by the day's events. Mrs. Pierce stood in the doorway, the ledger in her hand. The twins raced past her, already embroiled in an argument. Harper recited the names of extinct birds to an indifferent audience. Ty vanished with the swiftness of a disappearing magic trick. Alicia paused briefly, pulling out one earbud. "You used your question," she stated. "I never asked it," I replied. "You asked me if I wanted to talk," she corrected, a hint of amusement in her tone. "Tomorrow you can ask a better one." I shrugged. "Tomorrow I'll ask about the ledger." Her smile faltered. "That's not a question," she said. "That's a confession." "Of what?" I asked. "That you're already keeping track," she answered. That night, in the room I shared with Ty, the shadows clung stubbornly to the corners. Ty lay on his stomach, absorbed in his phone. He had a knack for appearing bored even when interested, as if he'd constructed a wall with a single private window. "You ever wonder where you belong?" I blurted out impulsively. Ty didn't look up. "Belonging is for people who can't run fast," he said. "Me, I stay light on my feet. Like it's blown away," I countered. He glanced at me, and for a fleeting moment, the window in his wall opened. "Yeah," he conceded, "it does." As the house fell silent, I lay awake, tracing imaginary lines on the ceiling. I wished for a map that could illustrate the connections between all the places I'd been. Riverton to this neighborhood, the ledger to my name, Alicia's measured responses to my hopes. I wanted to plot the coordinates of belonging and draw a route with a marker that wouldn't smudge. In the morning, I decided I would ask a better question, and I would keep the ledger in my mind, my own record of dates and names, my own thin lines, not to track where I've been forced to go, but to see if I could choose my own path. Mrs. Pierce kept a ceramic bowl filled with keys on a table by the front door. Some keys were tagged. Most were not. They felt heavy in my hand, small metal tongues that could speak if you knew how to listen. "Why so many?" I asked Alicia as we waited for the bathroom, the hallway feeling like a narrow, morning river. "Every kid who leaves forgets to return one," she explained. "Or Mrs. P forgets to ask. Or the kid refuses, because returning a key feels like an admission." "Admitting what?" I pressed. "That you never figured out which door it opened," she replied. The bathroom door clicked shut. The twins tumbled out like coins from a jar. In the kitchen, Ty was already devising a plan to escape. "I can take Jonah to school," he offered to Mrs. Pierce. "We'll go early. Coach wanted me to—" "You cut third period yesterday," she interrupted, without looking up from the ledger. "You're not taking anybody anywhere." Ty cracked his neck like a boxer after a round. You keep that book like it's a holy text, he muttered. It's not holy, Mrs. Pierce responded. It's a grocery list. Milk, bread, who got home safe? She looked up at him, a flicker of tenderness crossing her face. Eat, Tyler. The use of his full name ensured his obedience. On the bus, I continued to contemplate the keys. I used to imagine that one of them unlocked a door to a room where my mother sat waiting, a lamp illuminating the space. In that room, there would be a comfortable couch bearing only our stains, a clock keeping time only for our meals and movies and laughter. In that room, there would be a drawer filled with photographs that didn't change homes as frequently as I did. Stop narrating, Alicia interrupted, bumping my knee with hers. I can hear your brain doing voiceover. I was thinking about keys, she finished. I know. You looked at the bowl like it owed you money. I grinned. You're good at this. I used to be a younger sibling, she explained. It trains you to read faces before people talk. At lunch, Alicia led me to a table that didn't belong to any single social group. There was Kim, whose eyeliner served as a protective shield, Mateo, who sketched cities in the margins of his math worksheets, and Jay, a magician who performed tricks with coins and grief. When I mentioned that I was new, Jay made a quarter vanish and said, Me too, every day. Don't let Jay near your backpack, Kim warned. He'll make your pencils disappear and your trust issues reappear. I only steal things if they want to be stolen, Jay countered. You can tell by the way a pencil looks at you. Pencils don't have eyes, Mateo observed without looking up from his meticulously detailed bridge drawing. Everything is eyes, Jay insisted. You just have to be shameless enough to look back. On the way home, Ty didn't appear on the bus, nor did he show up for dinner. Mrs. Pierce crossed out his name in the ledger and circled it. What does the circle mean? I asked. Waiting, she replied. Alicia moved peas around her plate as if they were chess pieces. He'll be back, she stated, not out of hope, but out of habit. After dinner, Mrs. Pierce retrieved a shoebox from the pantry and placed it on the table. Inside was a collection of key tags, sticky notes, index cards, a napkin, even an old carnival ticket, each bearing a name, some with dates, others with single words, piano, dog, night lights, gates. She handed me a marker. Write Jonah on one, she instructed. Pick a key. Why? I asked. Because it matters to believe a door can be yours, she replied. I sorted through the keys until I found one with a ridged spine, a key that seemed to hold secrets. I printed my name in bold letters, looped the tag through the keyhole, and dropped it into the bowl. The small clinking sound held the weight of a solemn promise. That night, I dreamt of a house with 100 doors and the patience to try them all. In the dream, Alicia carried the bowl of keys. Ty picked a lock with a grin, daring the world to stop him. Mrs. Pierce stood by a door lacking a knob and said kindly, Some doors are a metaphor, Jonah. You don't open them. You become them. I awoke to the soft click of the front door. Ty was slipping inside, his breath sharp with the chill of the night and the scent of cheap cigarettes. He saw me watching from the hallway. Don't write this in your little book, he said. It's not a book, it's a ledger, I corrected, and he snorted, a sound that was half laugh, half surrender. I know a guy who keeps a spare key under his tire, he said as he climbed the stairs. He thinks he's clever. He's not. He paused on the landing. Don't tell Mrs. P. She already knows, I replied. She put a circle by your name. He looked at me as if I'd spoken a language he hadn't heard in a long time. Yeah, he said. She would. He continued to his room, then paused again. Belonging, kid? Maybe it's not a door. Maybe it's the person who waits up with the light on. I wanted to say, asterisk, that's a door too. Asterisk instead, I said, you're home. For now, he amended, but his tone was softer than his words. Every house had rules. Mrs. Pierce displayed hers on the refrigerator with a cow-shaped magnet. The list was short. No locked doors. Homework before screens. Ask before you borrow. Bedtime is 9:30 on school nights, unless it's a book and you're quiet about it. Be kind, even when you don't feel like it. There's always a loophole, Jay remarked at lunch when I shared the list. Be kind, even when you don't feel like it. Loophole. I don't feel like it, but I'll pretend. Pretending can be practice, Alicia added. You do it enough, and one day you don't have to pretend. After school, Mrs. Pierce handed me a stack of folded laundry. Laundry room is down the hall. Your bed's the one by the window. I share with Ty. I clarified. You share with Ty's music, she corrected. He'll pretend he doesn't want to talk to you. He'll talk. In the room, the beds were adorned with mismatched quilts, each seeming to have lived a life of its own. Ty's pillow bore the imprint of his head, as if meticulously mapped during sleep. I made my bed with military precision, then softened the corners because a perfectly made bed felt like a defiant act. On the dresser, a note in Alicia's handwriting. Asterisk borrowed room, not borrowed life. Welcome. Asterisk a chocolate bar sat beside it, 2 squares already missing. I ate the third, leaving the fourth untouched. You don't take the last piece of anything in a house like this. At dinner, the conversation revolved around homework and the television remote. Harper launched into a lecture on migratory patterns. Arctic terns can live 30 years, she announced. They fly from the Arctic to the Antarctic and back. That's about 44,000 miles a year. Why? The twins asked in unison. Because home is different places at different times, Harper replied, a hint of pride in her voice, as if she'd found a bird that could somehow explain our shared experience. Do they ever get tired? I inquired. Of course, she admitted. But what's the alternative? After dinner, I wandered the hallway, counting doors, bathroom, closet, a former nursery now serving as a storage room filled with outgrown clothing and abandoned plants. The last door was different. It bore a small chip at the bottom, as if something had attempted to force its way in or out. That one's the quiet room, Alicia explained, appearing behind me. When someone needs to fall apart without scaring the others. Do I use it? I used to. She touched the chipped paint with her toe. There was a time I cried like it was my job. Then I got promoted. Her smile made me want to understand the unwritten rules of her heart. Ty leaned in the doorway of our room, arms crossed. You casing the joint? He asked. I'm memorizing, I replied. So if I have to leave, I still have it. Smart, he conceded. Also dumb. Things you memorize get rewritten. Then I'll memorize the feeling. I countered. Feelings get rewritten too, he remarked, not unkindly. That night, the house creaked with the sounds of aging wood. I reflected on the rules, realizing they were essentially a promise. Asterisk, if you follow these, maybe we can be something like a family. Asterisk, I thought about the rooms I'd slept in before. The one with the sticking lock, the one with the band poster I didn't recognize, the one with the broken blinds that let in the streetlight like a sharp blade. When sleep finally came, I dreamt of a borrowed bedroom where the walls possessed ears but listened kindly. I dreamt of a ledger where my name wasn't crossed out or circled, but underlined twice. I dreamt of Arctic terns and the vast, courageous geography of their lives. The first lesson in foster care isn't how to introduce yourself. It's how to pack. My belongings consisted of what fit in a county-issued duffel bag. Tightly folded clothes, sneakers tied together, and a photograph I tried not to examine too closely. When a bag was zipped, it felt less like possessions and more like an escape hatch. Why do you fold everything so carefully? Ty asked one night, watching me repack after school as if it were an ingrained habit. So it doesn't wrinkle, I replied. You think anyone cares if your shirt's wrinkled? He asked. I care, I responded, more sharply than intended. It makes me feel like I get to decide something. He didn't laugh. He merely nodded, as if comprehending more than he cared to admit. At school, Mateo observed me carefully placing a notebook in my bag. You're like a soldier, he remarked, always ready to move. Maybe I am, I conceded. Or maybe you're scared you'll disappear if you don't keep your things close, he suggested. He wasn't wrong. That weekend, Mrs. Pierce gave me a box of clothes from a local donation drive. Pick what fits, she said. I sorted through jeans, sweaters, and a jacket bearing someone else's initials. Alicia stood near the doorway. "Don't look at the tag," she warned. "It'll make you think about the ghost who wore it before you." "I don't mind ghosts," I replied. "You will," she countered, "because they remind you you're temporary." Later that night, I spread the clothes on my bed and selected only 3 items: a soft hoodie, a pair of well-fitting jeans, and a t-shirt that smelled faintly of soap rather than the scent of strangers. Ty entered and pointed at the remaining clothes. "You're not keeping them?" he asked. "Too heavy," I replied. He grinned. "That's the art. Pack light, leave light. Pretend it doesn't hurt." But it did. Each discarded shirt felt like a lost version of myself. Before bed, I tucked the hoodie under my pillow, not out of necessity, but because I needed something that felt undeniably mine. If the foster home was a country, then the cafeteria was its wild frontier. Tables were territories. Athletes claimed the center. The loud kids colonized the back. The quiet ones occupied the borders, where one could eat in relative peace without making eye contact. In my second week, Ty beckoned me to his group. "This is Jonah," he announced. "He's cool." Cool meant remaining silent when he skipped class, not asking questions when he disappeared, and laughing at jokes that weren't funny but functioned as social currency. Across the room, Alicia sat with her friends, Kim, Mateo, and Jay. She made eye contact and gestured to the empty seat beside her, but I stayed with Ty's group. When lunch ended, she cornered me by the lockers. "Why didn't you sit with us?" she asked. I didn't want to make Ty mad. "Ty's always mad," she pointed out. "That's not your problem." "It feels like it is," I admitted. She softened, a rare occurrence. "Here's the thing about cafeterias, Jonah. You don't have to sit where you're told. You sit where you belong." That night, I dreamed of maps, the cafeteria sprawling across them like continents, arrows indicating movement between tables. A dotted line connected Ty's group to Alicia's, and I wondered which border I was meant to cross. At breakfast, Mrs. Pierce noticed me drawing circles in my cereal bowl. "You're quiet," she observed. "I'm deciding where to sit," I replied. "At school?" she asked, tilting her head. "Everywhere," I answered. She didn't respond, but she wrote something in the ledger, as if to remind herself that even geography could be a survival tactic. The word home was elusive. Teachers asked for it on forms. Friends asked in hushed tones, and each time I said Mrs. Pierce's house, it felt like wearing someone else's coat. One night after dinner, Harper articulated the concept better than I could. Birds return to where they hatch, unless they're pushed out too soon. Then they circle until they mistake the sky for home. "Then what?" I asked. "They keep flying," she replied simply. Later, I asked Alicia, "Do you call this place home?" She shrugged. "Sometimes, when it's safer than saying nothing." Mrs. Pierce overheard. She set down her tea, the steam fogging her glasses. "Home is where someone waits up for you, even if it changes." Ty entered late, his backpack half unzipped. "Then I guess I got a dozen homes," he mumbled, but the way Mrs. Pierce's gaze followed him indicated her disagreement. Once a month, I wrote to my mother. The county made no guarantees of delivery, but I wrote nonetheless. "Dear Mom," I began, unsure if the salutation still applied. I filled the page with things I couldn't say aloud, about the keys, the cafeteria, the rules on the fridge. Alicia saw me sealing the letter. "You know they don't send them, right?" she asked softly. "I know." "Then why keep writing?" she pressed. "Because maybe one day they'll catch up to her." She hesitated, then handed me a folded page from her notebook. "For my brother," she admitted. "He never gets them either." That night, we exchanged letters like contraband. We didn't need them mailed. We just needed them seen. Birthdays in foster care are peculiar. Some kids don't celebrate at all. Others throw excessively loud parties, as if shouting at the silence. When my birthday arrived, Mrs. Pierce baked a lopsided cake. "Happy 13, Jonah," the frosting declared. The twins insisted on candles, Alicia on music. Ty rolled his eyes, but remained in the room, a gesture that felt like a gift in itself. Make a wish, Harper instructed, her voice like a librarian guarding secrets. I closed my eyes and tried, but all I could visualize were names, 6 different last names I carried across different homes, none of them feeling quite right. What did you wish for? Alicia teased. If I tell, it won't come true, I evaded. Secretly, I wished for a name that wouldn't change. It started with nothing, as most fights do, a shove at the bus stop, Ty's aggressive words, another kid's louder retort. By the time fists started flying, I was caught in the middle, attempting to restrain Ty. He swung anyway. Jonah, move, he shouted. I didn't. He grabbed his sleeve instead, feeling the tension in him like a tightly wound rope about to snap. The principal's voice cut through the air, sharp and piercing, like a siren. We ended up in her office, Ty glaring at the floor, and me clutching an ice pack to my injury. You protect him too much, Alicia scolded me later. The accusation hung heavy in the air. He's my brother, I replied, my voice firm despite the tremor in my chest. The statement felt as much a wish as a fact. He's not, she snapped, the retort sharp and immediate. Then, her tone softened, a subtle shift in her demeanor. But I understand why you want him to be. Her understanding, though unexpected, offered a small comfort. That night, Ty mumbled from his bed, "You're an idiot for stepping in." His words were laced with a mixture of annoyance and something else, something I couldn't quite decipher. Maybe, I conceded, unsure of whether to defend my actions or apologize. He remained silent for a long time before adding, a quiet murmur barely audible above the quiet of the night. Thanks. The unexpected gratitude surprised me, a small crack in his usual defensive wall. Alicia's rebellion wasn't loud or disruptive. It wasn't characterized by skipping school or slamming doors. Hers was a quieter form of defiance. She subtly increased the volume of her music, a barely perceptible but noticeable increase in the background hum of her life. She painted her nails black, a small act of self-expression in direct contrast to Mrs. Pierce's preference for pink. She responded to questions with riddles, deflecting direct inquiries with enigmatic answers that both concealed and revealed. One evening, she led me up to the rooftop, a secret rendezvous offering a different perspective. Sometimes you need to see the world from higher up, she explained, her voice almost a whisper against the vastness of the night. The perspective shift was both literal and metaphorical. The town spread beneath us, a tapestry of porch lights and distant highways. The familiar landscape looked different from this height, unfamiliar and yet strangely comforting. Feels smaller from here, I admitted, the vastness of the night sky dwarfing my problems. Exactly, she agreed, a knowing smile playing on her lips. Problems too. Her words contained a profound understanding beyond her years. She handed me her headphones. For once, the music wasn't the usual cacophony. It was soft, melancholic, deeply affecting music. It was the type of music that caused a tightening in the chest, a resonating ache of familiarity. What's this called? I asked, captivated by the haunting melody. Belonging, she said with a smirk, a touch of irony coloring her words. But don't get used to it. Her cautionary tone hinted at the ephemeral nature of such feelings. In that moment, with the wind playing with her braids and the sky stretching endlessly above us, I almost believed her. Almost, but not quite. The possibility, however, held a glimmer of hope. Mrs. Pierce kept an emergency bag by the door. Duct tape, granola bars, phone chargers, a flashlight, and a folder containing copies of everyone's important papers. When I first saw it, I assumed it was for tornadoes, a natural disaster that seemed plausible in our unpredictable lives. It turned out to be, for caseworkers, a far more immediate and pressing concern. Why do we need that? I asked, curious about the bag's contents and their purpose. So nobody leaves hungry or in the dark, she said, zipping it shut, then zipping it again, as if the zippers themselves could seal fate. Her actions conveyed both practicality and a sense of the precariousness of their situation. The county called on a Thursday. A placement had fallen through. They needed a bed for a 10-year-old named Mikey. The phone call signified another disruption to our already disrupted lives. By evening, he stood in our doorway, his cheeks red and raw from crying, his knuckles scabbed. His vulnerability was palpable, a visible manifestation of his distress. Mrs. Pierce knelt to his height, meeting him on his level, both literally and figuratively. "Rules are on the fridge," she said, her voice gentle and reassuring. "But tonight the only rule is you get to breathe." Her words provided a much-needed respite from the constant rules and regulations governing their lives. He looked at the emergency bag. The bag represented both security and uncertainty. "Is that for me?" he asked, his gaze fixed on the bag. "It's for all of us," she said, her voice calm and soothing. "In case life runs." Her words painted a vivid image of the fragility of their existence. She handed him a granola bar, a small act of kindness offering a momentary comfort. At dinner, Ty kept his eyes on his plate, avoiding eye contact, a silent testament to his emotional turmoil. Alicia attempted small talk, a desperate attempt to break the tense atmosphere. "What's your favorite color?" she asked, her voice tentative. "Green," Mikey whispered, his voice barely audible. "Good," she said, trying to sound cheerful. "We have a whole yard of it." Her attempt at lightheartedness felt forced, but genuine nonetheless. Later, when the house quieted, I found Ty on the porch, turning the emergency flashlight in his hands, its beam cutting through the night like a symbol of his inner turmoil. "You hate that bag," I said, observing his restless movements. He shrugged, his body language conveying his ambivalence. "I hate what it means," he explained, the words revealing a deeper anxiety. "That we're ready?" I asked, seeking to clarify his feelings. "That we're temporary," he said, his voice flat, expressing the underlying fear of impermanence. He clicked the flashlight on and off, the rhythmic clicking mimicking a heartbeat, unpredictable and unreliable. Before bed, I tucked a note into the bag's inner pocket. "If you find this, you're not alone." The simple message offered a silent reassurance, a quiet promise of connection and support. I didn't sign it. My identity was implicit in the action. Some weeks had 2 Tuesdays, the calendar one and the courtroom one. On those mornings, the county car smelled like stale coffee and anxious perfume, a strange combination of smells that permeated the air. The courthouse was cold, an environment designed to instill a sense of unease and anxiety, a place that made even the truth feel chilled to the bone. Our case got called at 9:42 a.m. The judge, weary and jaded, seemed to wear his exhaustion like a second robe beneath his official attire. The social workers exchanged hushed whispers, their conversations carrying the weight of countless similar cases. My mother wasn't there. The absence was a familiar pang of disappointment. "Where is she?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. My small stature seemed to amplify the immensity of my question. The attorney glanced at the clock, his attention elsewhere, his indifference adding to my feelings of inadequacy. "We mailed a notice," he replied, his response devoid of empathy. The judge cleared his throat, signaling the beginning of the proceedings. "We proceed," he announced, his words formal and impersonal, devoid of any hint of compassion. Mrs. Pierce squeezed my shoulder, offering a silent gesture of support. Alicia sat behind me, her thumb rubbing a coin smooth in her pocket, a nervous habit in the face of uncertainty. Ty didn't come. He said courthouses felt like prisons that hadn't yet decided who to incarcerate. His absence was a profound statement. They talked about me as if I weren't present, as if I were not the only true expert on my life. Words like continuance, placement stability, and reunification plan floated like unreachable balloons, devoid of any real meaning. Legal jargon served only to obscure the reality of the situation. When the judge asked if I had anything to say, my mouth felt dry and parched, my words trapped inside. "Your Honor," Mrs. Pierce said gently, stepping in to advocate for me. "He's doing well in school. He's safe." Her simple statement held layers of meaning, both protective and potentially restrictive. Safe. The word itself could be a haven or a prison, depending on one's perspective. Outside, the sun pretended it had nothing to do with the grim proceedings taking place inside the courthouse. The contrasting bright sunshine seemed to mock the cold reality of the courtroom. We sat on the steps and ate vending machine crackers, a small solace in the face of a larger struggle. Alicia bumped my shoulder, a gesture of support, her concern palpable despite her efforts to appear unconcerned. "You okay?" she asked. "I think so," I replied, my voice still hesitant. She leaned closer, her tone softer. "You know what Courtroom Tuesdays teach you? That your voice matters even when it shakes. Next time, try one sentence. Just one." Her advice was both practical and encouraging. "What sentence?" I asked, seeking further guidance. "The one you wish was written in the file," she replied, her words implying a profound understanding of the power of self-advocacy. On the drive back, I practiced under my breath. I want to belong where I'm not afraid the door will close behind me. It was a long sentence, perhaps longer than the desired one-sentence limit, but it felt true, a statement of my deepest longing. Summer made the town shimmer with heat. Ty fell in with the river boys, kids who hung out by the river under the bridge, exhibiting a bravado that was both alluring and alarming. They weren't inherently bad, but their influence was a dangerous force of gravity. "Don't," Alicia warned, her voice laced with apprehension. "They'll make you feel chosen, then charge interest." Her warning held a deep understanding of the exploitative nature of such groups. "I'm not joining anything," I said, denying her warning despite a latent curiosity. But when Ty said, "Come on," I went my own inherent desire for belonging overriding my better judgment. Under the bridge, time seemed to stretch and distort. Jay performed card tricks that were met with silence rather than applause. Mateo sketched the arches of the bridge, comparing its skeletal structure to the bones of a cathedral. A boy named Rook taught me to skip stones, providing me with both instruction and a metaphorical lesson. "It's not about force," he said, his voice calm and reassuring. "It's about believing the water knows how to hold you up." His words spoke to a deeper trust in the world. Ty acted as the unofficial king, flipping his lighter, his laughter too loud, a display of forced confidence designed to mask his anxieties. When a car pulled up on the dirt road, a sudden silence fell over the group. The arrival signaled a shift in the dynamics. Two older men stepped out, strangers who didn't fit in with the river boys, their presence emanating a sense of decay and disillusionment. "Ty," one of them said, their words dripping with implicit threats. "We could use a runner." Alicia's warning rang in my ears like a bell, a foreboding that confirmed my deepest fears. Ty's smile faded, his forced bravado collapsing under the pressure. "I'm out," he said, his refusal both brave and defiant. The taller man looked past him to me, sizing me up, evaluating my worth. "And you?" he asked, his tone insinuating a threat. I shook my head, my voice unexpectedly finding its strength. "I've got somewhere to be," I said, the word surprising even myself. "Where?" he sneered, incredulous at my defiance. "Home," I said, surprised at how easily the word came out, a simple statement that held a powerful meaning. We left before the situation escalated into violence. Back on the street, Ty shoved his hands into his pockets, his body language revealing his discomfort. "Stupid," he muttered, his words directed at both himself and the men who had accosted them. "Smart," I said, choosing to focus on their escape rather than the danger. He looked at me sideways, a grudging respect evident in his gaze. You keep choosing like that, he said, his voice laced with surprising admiration. You might actually make it. Come with me. I wanted to say, my mind yearning for a connection that felt real. Instead, I matched his stride, two shadows lengthening as they walked towards the fading light of the evening. Mrs. Pierce kept shoeboxes of photographs stacked in the hall closet, each box labeled by year and house, a physical representation of their history. On rainy days, she let us spread them out on the rug and piece together our own narrative. Who's this? I asked, holding up a picture of a child on a tricycle, missing one shoe, a small detail that added to the narrative's poignancy. Desmond, she said, smiling, her eyes reflecting a bittersweet nostalgia. He used to sleep with a dictionary. Why? I asked, curious about the boy's unusual habit. So he'd wake up knowing more, she replied, her words revealing a deeper understanding of the boy's desire to better himself. We passed the pictures around like pieces of evidence and absolution, each photo holding a fragment of a past both shared and individual. The twins found a picture of themselves the day they arrived, their posture revealing their grief, their mouths smeared with chocolate, a small detail adding to the complex layers of their situation. Alicia unearthed a Polaroid of herself at 9, her gaze defiant, daring the world to flinch. You look fierce, I said, captivated by her youthful intensity. I was, she said, a self-assuredness resonating in her tone. Still am. There were gaps, of course, years that went missing when families moved, phones broke, or memories chose self-defense. We wrote names on the backs when we knew them, unknown when we didn't. On a few, Mrs. Pierce had written just one word, safe. The single word carried the weight of multiple implications. Take one, she told each of us. Make it yours. I chose a photo of the living room at sunrise. The sofa crooked, books open, a pair of socks abandoned mid-escape. The scene both chaotic and comforting. Nobody was in it, and yet everyone was. The photo symbolized home in its essence. On the back I wrote, home in progress. The phrase was both aspirational and honest. That evening, I propped it on my dresser beside my bed. Ty glanced at it and smirked. You took a picture of a mess, he observed, his voice devoid of genuine criticism. Exactly, I said, understanding his perspective, but defending my choice. It's honest. He didn't argue. He just looked a second longer than usual, as if considering the idea that a mess could be beautiful simply because it was our own. Sirens at 2 a.m. are a different species. They don't wail, they pry. Their sound is intrusive, invasive. We woke to blue light fingering the ceiling, the emergency lights illuminating the ceiling with their harsh, cold light. Mrs. Pierce moved with a practiced ease, her movements efficient and calm, as if she had rehearsed this scenario countless times before. Everyone downstairs, she said, her voice calm and steady. Reassuring presence amidst the chaos. Shoes on. Fire. Cam asked, his breath hitching with apprehension. Neighbor's house, she said, her eyes flicking towards the emergency bag, a silent acknowledgement of the ever-present uncertainty. We're okay. But her eyes flicked to the emergency bag, a reminder of their vulnerability. The visual cue created a sense of foreboding and anxiety. We stood on the lawn in our pajamas, the street illuminated and barricaded by flashing emergency lights. Across the way, smoke crawled from a window like a rumor, a creeping uncertainty filling the air. A woman sobbed into a blanket. A firefighter shouted for a hose, his voice cutting through the confusion. Someone handed out water bottles, as if quenching thirst was the primary solution to a complex crisis. Mikey tucked himself beneath Alicia's arm. His vulnerable posture mirrored his anxieties. Is it going to jump? He whispered, staring at the fire. No, she said, her voice steady and reassuring. It's going to stay in its lane. Her calming voice helped soothe both Mikey's and perhaps her own fears. Ty hovered near the curb, his jaw tight, his body language revealing his suppressed anxiety. "I hate this part," he said, his voice conveying a deep-seated frustration. "What part?" I asked, seeking to understand his feelings. "The reminder," he said, his voice low and almost inaudible. "That loss doesn't knock. It just lets itself in." His words captured the insidious nature of loss and the unexpected ways it permeates our lives. A neighbor's little girl cried, "Our cat!" And before anyone could stop him, Ty broke into a run, past the tape, toward the open front door of the burning house. His spontaneous act of bravery defied all logic and safety. A firefighter grabbed him, cussing at him for his reckless actions. "You want to be a hero or a ghost, kid?" he shouted, his voice rough but not devoid of understanding. Ty jerked free, his eyes bright with a mixture of anger, determination, and perhaps something else. He couldn't finish, the intensity of the moment overwhelming him. The firefighter, already softened by countless similar nights, nodded once and disappeared inside the house. Minutes later he returned, covered in soot, holding a meowing, terrified cat. The little girl collapsed around a rescued cat, finding solace in its presence. Ty exhaled for the first time that night, the relief evident in his posture. Mrs. Pierce didn't scold him. She simply placed her hand on the back of his neck, offering a silent gesture of comfort and support. She held it there until the tremor left his shoulders. Her simple act demonstrated profound understanding and compassion. When the trucks rolled away and the street slowly returned to normalcy, we went inside. The house smelled of fear and lemon cleaner, a strange combination of odors reflecting the complex emotions experienced that night. Mrs. Pierce opened the emergency bag and laid everything out, then put it all back, slower than before. The slow, deliberate action served as a therapeutic exercise for her and the children. "Why'd you do that?" I asked, curious about her actions. "To remind myself we're ready," she said, her voice laced with both a sense of security and the acknowledgement of their vulnerability. "And also that we're together. Upstairs, sleep didn't come easily." I looked at the photo on my dresser, the messy living room, the quiet proof of their life together. Somewhere a siren wailed again, this time farther away, a reminder that their lives were filled with unexpected events. I whispered into the dark, to whatever might listen, "Stay in your lane." The quiet plea was a silent wish for order in a chaotic world. Ty's voice floated from the other bed, breaking the silence. "You still awake?" he asked. "Yeah, a beat." "Good," he said. "Me too." And somehow, in the blue-tinged quiet after the sirens had faded, that counted as belonging. Social workers spoke a different dialect. It wasn't English, not exactly. It was a language of acronyms and half-smiles, words wrapped in bubble wrap so they wouldn't bruise you. The sterile and impersonal language of social work served to maintain distance and emotional control. When Ms. Kelly arrived for her monthly check-in, the house shifted into a different mode. The twins hid their game controllers, Harper rehearsed answers like multiplication tables, and Ty vanished. He always did. The anticipation of the check-in created a sense of tension and anxiety within the household. "How are you adjusting?" she asked me, her pen hovering over her notepad, waiting for my response. "Fine," I said, using the carefully chosen foster kid code for "don't make waves." The use of "fine" was an act of self-preservation. But Alicia nudged me under the table. "One sentence," she whispered, her advice a reminder of how to navigate the complexities of their situation. So I tried, "I want to stay here." The simple declaration was remarkably potent. Ms. Kelly blinked, surprised by the directness of my response. She wrote it down as if it were a fragile thing, carefully recording it on the page. "That's good feedback, Jonah." Her statement showed a level of recognition of his honesty. Later, Alicia smirked. "See, you speak social worker now. Feels like speaking in riddles." "That's the trick," she said, her words conveying a deeper understanding of social work. "You tell enough truth to be heard, but not enough to get hurt. That night, I wondered if there'd ever be a language where I could just speak and belong without translation. The desire for authenticity and uninhibited self-expression permeated my thoughts. My file was thick as a brick, full of almosts. Almost adopted at 5. Almost reunified at 9. Almost placed with relatives at 11. The numerous attempts at finding a permanent home were all recorded in the file. One afternoon in the library, I spread out my school maps. Rivers, highways, state lines. I traced them with my finger, whispering, almost, almost, almost. The map became a physical representation of my feelings of impermanence. Alicia sat down across from me. "Cartography club?" she asked, her voice teasing. "Just making sense of things," I responded, my voice subdued. She peered at my map. "You missed something." She took a pen and drew a circle around our neighborhood. "This is now. You're here. It's temporary." "So," she said, her words a quiet rebellion against the feeling of impermanence. "Temporary still counts. Bridges are temporary when you're on them. Doesn't mean they don't carry you." I looked at the circle again, how it glowed like a lighthouse in ink. Maybe almost was just another word for not yet. The possibility of hope emerged from her words. One Saturday, Mrs. Pierce's friend Mr. Howard visited. He wasn't really a foster dad anymore. Retired, she said, but once he'd raised a dozen kids who weren't his. He carried a bag of sticks, paper, and string. The simple supplies hinted at a more profound activity. "We're building kites," he announced, his voice enthusiastic. The twins whooped with delight. Mikey grinned for the first time in weeks. Even Ty wandered outside, skeptical but curious. The activity provided an opportunity for connection and shared purpose. We cut and tied, glued and folded, our hands guided by Mr. Howard's patient instructions. "Every kite is different," he said, his words reflecting the diversity and individuality of the children. "Some wobble, some soar. Doesn't matter. What matters is they fly." When the kites finally lifted, the yard turned into sky. The simple act transformed the mundane into something magical. My blue paper kite tugged the string like it had somewhere urgent to be. "See that?" Mr. Howard said, pointing towards the kites soaring in the sky. "Even paper knows how to belong to the wind." Ty smirked, his skepticism still present but diminished. "Until it crashes." "Even then," Mr. Howard replied, his words offering a profound lesson about resilience and perseverance. "You pick it up, patch it, try again. That's family." I held the string tighter, hoping the sky had room for kids like us. Holidays in foster care were patchwork. That year, Mrs. Pierce took us to the church basement where long tables groaned under donated turkeys and canned cranberry sauce. The makeshift holiday celebration provided a sense of community and shared experience. "Community dinner," she said. "Nobody eats alone." We lined up with strangers, grandmothers, drifters, families whose luck had run out. The temporary community brought together diverse individuals facing similar challenges. Ty cracked jokes about mystery stuffing, but his laugh sounded softer here, more genuine. At the table, Harper recited facts about pilgrims until Alicia hushed her with a roll of her eyes, a casual display of sibling affection. Mikey fell asleep on my shoulder, gravy on his sleeve, the scene both touching and commonplace. Across the room, I saw other foster kids with other caseworkers. We exchanged the briefest nods, the kind that said, "I see you. You're not invisible." The small acknowledgement provided a sense of shared experience and validation. When it was our turn to share what we were thankful for, Alicia went first. "Music," she said, her voice revealing a passion for something she held dear. The twins chorused, "Each other." Harper said, "Books." Ty muttered, "Freedom, sometimes." When they looked at me, I froze. Then I remembered Alicia's rule. One sentence. "I'm thankful for a table where there's a seat for me." The simple statement captured the essence of belonging and the comfort it provided. Mrs. Pierce's eyes glistened, but she didn't speak. She just passed me the mashed potatoes, which was better than any sermon. Her gesture spoke volumes. School friends came and went like neighbors in a revolving door. But Mateo was different. He sat with me at lunch, sketching buildings that looked sturdier than anything in our lives. "You need a foundation," he said once. "Otherwise the walls won't hold." His observation held a profound truth. "What's my foundation?" I asked, seeking clarity. "You'll figure out," he said, reassuring me with his unwavering support. Meanwhile, you've got me. One Friday, he invited me over. His house smelled of spices and permanence. His mother offered second helpings before I'd finished firsts. "This is what it's like," I whispered as Mateo dealt cards for a game I didn't know. What's like?" he asked, his voice prompting clarification. "Family. That stays." He didn't answer, just shoved the deck toward me. "Your turn." His quiet support held more weight than any explanation. When I left, his mom hugged me like I wasn't breakable. The whole walk home, I felt taller, as if belonging wasn't just an idea, but something you could borrow and keep. The experience felt transformative. That night, Alicia asked, "Good day?" "Yeah," I said, my voice reflecting the positive experience. She studied my face, then smiled. "Careful, Jonah. You're starting to look like you believe it." One afternoon, MS. Kelly carried in a folder, so heavy it looked like it might break her arm. She set it on the table with a thud. "That's your file," Alicia whispered, her voice low and somber. "Your whole life in paper." I opened it when no one was looking. Inside, reports, transcripts, notes scribbled by people I barely remembered. Adjustment, fair. Attachment, inconsistent. Prognosis, guarded. The clinical assessments of my life seemed overly reductive. Guarded, like I was a castle too dangerous to enter. The official assessments reflected a lack of understanding of who he was. Ty peeked over my shoulder. "Don't read that crap," he said, his voice laced with protective defiance. "They don't know you. They think they do. Then prove them wrong." He closed the folder with one hand. "Files lie. People don't." His assertion offered a counterpoint to the cold reality of his life. But I knew people lied too. I stared at the folder long after Ty left, wondering if the pages defined me more than I wanted to admit. The clinical assessments seemed to carry more weight than his own self-perception. The word came up at dinner, dropped like a fork that clattered too loudly. "Adoption," I repeated, stunned by the unexpected mention of the possibility. Mrs. Pierce didn't deny it. "A family's interested. Just preliminary." Her casual tone failed to mask the seriousness of the situation. Ty pushed back his chair, his discomfort evident. "Here we go again," he said, resigned to the possibility of another upheaval. Alicia's fork hovered midair, her body language reflecting the anxiety of the moment. "Do you want that?" she asked me, her tone both supportive and slightly questioning. I didn't know. I wanted permanence, yes. But leaving here meant leaving them. "Think about it," Mrs. Pierce said softly, offering understanding and providing him with the space to consider the implications of his decision. No decision tonight. That night, I lay awake, the word echoing, adoption. It sounded like rescue and exile at the same time. The word held both hope and fear. The county arranged visits with the potential adoptive family. Trial weekends, they called them. Like test driving a car. The family was kind. A mom who baked, a dad who told bad jokes, a dog that leapt into my lap. Everything staged to feel like forever. The perfect family seemed unreal. But Sunday nights were brutal. Each goodbye felt like being peeled away from my own skin. The separations left painful and lasting wounds. Back at Mrs. Pierce's, Alicia asked, "How was it?" "Nice," I said, a carefully chosen response that revealed little of the complexities of his feelings. "Nice doesn't mean home," she replied, her observation sharply accurate. I didn't ask. He just punched my arm lightly, as if to say, "Don't forget us." His gentle gesture underscored the importance of their bond. Christmas lights blinked like promises nobody could keep. The house smelled of pine and cinnamon. Mikey tore into presents. The twins fought over a game. Harper read a new book by the fire. The holiday festivities provided a momentary respite from the stress of the adoption process. In the quiet after, Mrs. Pierce asked me, "Do you want to stay with them? The family?" The simple question held the weight of a lifetime. The question lodged in my throat. I pictured the dog, the warm kitchen, the laughter. Then I pictured Alicia's rooftop, Ty's sarcasm, the ledger by the door. "I don't know," I whispered, my voice revealing the depth of his uncertainty. She touched my shoulder. "That's an answer to." Her acceptance of his ambivalence validated his feelings. That night, I stared at the tree lights flickering against the walls, wishing belonging came with a map instead of riddles. The ambiguity of his situation left him frustrated and confused. January brought a letter. Not from the county, not from school. From her, my mother. The unexpected letter signified a dramatic shift in his situation. The envelope was thin, her handwriting shaky. "Jonah, I'm sorry. I want to see you. I'm better now." My hands trembled. I showed Alicia. "She want back in?" Alicia asked, her voice laced with incredulity. "After all this time? She's my mom." The statement was both a declaration and a plea. "She's a storm," Alicia said quietly, her words reflecting her own experience with family dysfunction. "Storms don't care what they wreck." I didn't answer. I just folded the letter into my pocket. For the first time in years, the past wasn't behind me. It was knocking at the door. The arrival of his mother created a conflict between his desires and his fears. The letter from my mom left me restless. Ty found me packing my duffel, the same way I always had, tight folds, careful layers. His presence indicated an awareness of his anxieties. "You running?" he asked, his voice casual yet revealing his underlying concern. "Maybe. Running from or running to?" The simple yet profound question stopped him in his tracks. He had spent years running from things, but what if he ran towards something? I'd spent years fleeing, from houses, from goodbyes, from the fear of wanting too much. What if just once I ran towards something? The question of pursuing his desires versus avoiding pain provided a turning point in his thinking. That night, instead of leaving, I stayed. I told Mrs. Pierce I wanted to meet my mom, but I wasn't ready to leave here yet. She nodded, relief flickering in her tired eyes. "Then we'll do it together," she said, her willingness to support him revealing her deep compassion and commitment to his well-being. Alicia and I climbed back to the roof, the winter air cutting sharp. "What do you want?" she asked, her directness cutting to the heart of the matter. "I don't know. You do. You're just afraid to say it." I stared at the stars, thinking of trial weekends, the ledger, my mom's letter. Finally, I whispered, "I want to belong. Not halfway. Not borrowed. Real." The clear expression of his deepest desire signaled a major step forward in his emotional growth. Alicia smiled, sad and proud. "Then stop rationing your answers, Jonah. Claim it." The wind lifted her braids, carrying her words into the night. For the first time, I felt like the sky might actually be listening. The simple act of voicing his desire created a change in his perception of himself. At school, we filled out forms again. This time, instead of writing my legal last name, I paused, uncertain of what name to use. The simple question of identity held profound implications. "What's wrong?" Mateo asked, noticing his hesitation. "I don't know what name to use." "Use the one you want," he said simply, his direct approach acknowledging Jonah's agency. That night, I wrote it out in my notebook, Jonah Pierce. Not official, not permanent, but mine. A name I chose, not one handed to me. The simple act of selecting his own name felt empowering. When I showed Mrs. Pierce, her eyes welled. "Whatever name you choose, you'll always have a place here." And for once, the word always didn't feel like a lie. Her sincere words provided comfort and reassurance. The county called again. The adoptive family still wanted me. The court date was set. The continued pursuit of adoption created a lingering tension. In the waiting room, the file sat on the table, thick as ever. But this time I wasn't afraid of it. The file no longer held the same power over him. Inside the courtroom, the judge asked, "Jonah, do you understand what adoption means?" I nodded. "It means I get to belong somewhere." The simple statement held the weight of his journey. Mrs. Pierce squeezed my hand. Alicia winked from the back row. Ty looked away, but his jaw softened. The paperwork rustled like wings. The gavel fell. And for the first time, I wasn't just passing through. The finality of the decision marked the end of an era. Years later, I still remember the ledger. The lines, the names, the crossings out. But now I keep my own book, blank pages filled with stories I choose to write. He had moved from being defined by others to defining himself. Alicia sends postcards from college. Ty calls once a month, never saying much but always enough. Harper became a scientist, the twins comedians, Mikey an artist. The brief updates from the past reflect their continued progress and growth. Me, I stand in my own living room, photo albums on the shelf, a key ring with only one house attached. When people ask where I'm from, I don't stumble anymore. I say here, I'm from here. He finally has a sense of place and belonging. Because belonging isn't about where you started or even where you end up. It's about the place and the people who let you stop running. And that's where we begin. The conclusion offers a reflection on the journey and the meaning of belonging.